Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Judy Newton, chairperson of the Levy Senior Center Foundation, and we are here today to welcome you to today's Levy Longevity Program called Exercising Safely After Taking Time Off. Today's program is presented by Samantha Cochran, MS, ATC, and Sports Medicine Outreach Liaison for the Chicago metro area for AMITA. In today's presentation, Sam will provide professional recommendations for how to get our bodies moving again with tips for preventing injury while staying active. Typically, Sam moderates this series, and now we get to benefit from her area of expertise. The new longevity series is presented in conjunction with AMITA Health and the City of Evanston. In these sessions, we will discuss common issues of concern for adults 55 and better. But more importantly, our mission is to come together in the spirit of life and learning to help us all age well. As always, we appreciate your support of the foundation as we continue to work to connect our community of older adults. So Sam, you're on, take it away and enjoy, everybody.
Thank you, Judy. I'm happy to join you today as your speaker. I know if you've joined us in the past, you probably recognize me as your moderator, as Judy had mentioned. So I'm going to start off with some of my moderator duties and go over some housekeeping items at the beginning here. First, I just want to remind you that all attendees are muted for the duration of the presentation. Questions may be submitted using the Q&A feature in the bottom center of your screen. Please do not use the raise hand or chat feature or attempt to unmute. We will not be able to hear or see you. Next, we will be answering questions throughout the presentation as well as at the end of the presentation. Additionally, it is not permitted for this presentation to be recorded by attendees. However, it is being recorded and will be available on the Levy Foundation YouTube channel and website. Lastly, the presentation is intended for information purposes only and is not intended to replace individualized care provided by your respective doctors or health practitioners. AMITA Health and the Levy Foundation are not liable for the misuse of any information presented today. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. So as I mentioned before, I am an athletic trainer by trade. If you're unfamiliar with the profession, we work with athletes of all ages and skill levels from recreation to professional. What sets us apart as part of our training and education is that our primary goal as athletic trainers is in injury prevention, which brings us to today's topic. I'm going to be focusing on getting back to exercise and physical activity safely to best prevent injury. So first, let's focus on exercise. We're going to talk about some general guidelines today, benefits of exercise, and how to safely engage in physical activity, but I want to focus on general exercise guidelines first. So the American College of Sports Medicine has recommendations for all age levels on physical activity that we should get daily. We're going to focus on the adult population, so 18 and up. They recommend 150 or more minutes of moderate physical activity per week. And that is the same for older adults, that's 65 and up age range. We also recommend muscle strengthening activities of moderate or greater intensity for 2 or more days a week. And it's the same as adults, as older adults, but we need to include balance training and a combination of activities that include aerobic and flexibility and mobility training as well. And for all ages, just a good rule of thumb, we need to sit less and move more. All physical activity counts. So let's talk a little bit more about activity types. We mentioned a little bit before about moderate and vigorous activity, and then our resistance. So moderate activity, you would be able to talk while you're doing that activity, but not necessarily sing because you are consuming more oxygen to get through that activity. Some examples of moderate activity are a brisk walk, walking your dog, slow biking, playing doubles tennis, light dancing, or active home chores. Vigorous activity, you're going to be somewhat out of breath, not wheezing, you can't catch your breath at all. That would be anaerobic activity, meaning without oxygen, and those are very short bursts. But vigorous activity is you're really challenging yourself, you're getting your heart rate up, sweating, and it's more intense in nature. So that's going to be your jogging, fast biking, maybe singles tennis, or an aerobic exercise class. And then we have our resistance training. This is an external load of the major muscle groups. So body weight exercises like planks or squats, weightlifting, whether they be free weight or on the machine, and then also resistance band exercises where you see the different colored tubings that people use to, do bicep curls with, or squats, or what have you. And these can be broken up into any time increments. So whether it's 5 minutes or 50 minutes, it doesn't matter. All of these can be classified as moderate, vigorous, or resistance in any sort of time increment. So this is just an infographic about what we just talked about. Again, at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity per week, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity a week, or you can do a combination of the two of them. And then we want to do 2 strength building days per week. This is really important to get a combination and variety of things, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later. But with age, our bones shrink in size and density, and muscles lose strength, endurance, and flexibility. So we need to continue to challenge them so they can grow and stay strong and help prevent injury, and we're able to do all the activities that we want to do in life. All of these factors, like the loss in strength and endurance and flexibility, have a negative impact on coordination, stability, and balance, which can increase our risk of injury, of whether it be from falling or improper posture, or not lifting something properly because we don't have the mobility or strength to be able to do it appropriately. How many people do we know out there that have, bent over to pick up a piece of paper or a pencil off the floor and they threw their back out? Something that really is avoidable and shouldn't happen. So we want to make sure that we get a well-rounded exercise regime in our week. So now we're just going to talk about some of the benefits of exercise. And these are just general. Obviously, it has major health benefits. It improves our sleep, helps us maintain a healthy weight, manages our stress, and it reduces a risk of a number of chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, also are the joint pain and back pain that we just talked about a little bit, and even cancer. So some movement is always better than no movement at all. And, we can build into doing more and more every day as our conditioning levels improve. And it's never too late to start. Even if you've never exercised before, you can start today and do something, and you can be better tomorrow, and every minute counts. So now let's talk about injury prevention with exercise. As a general guideline, you should always check in with your doctor or primary healthcare provider before engaging in any new activity. If you haven't had your yearly physical, you should schedule that before you start exercising to make sure that you're healthy enough for exercise. So now we're going to talk about some components of daily living. So there are 3 factors of daily living that we should always be engaging in to make sure that we're living a healthy lifestyle, and that's going to improve our health and make sure that it's going to reduce our risk of injury as well. So those 3 key factors are hydration, nutrition, and sleep. And if you've attended these webinars before, we've talked about, some of these factors in other parts of our health and well-being, and they're also a very big important factor for injury prevention. So let's talk about hydration first. General guidelines for hydration. The Institute of Medicine recommends about 9 8-ounce glasses a day of water for women and about 13 for men. Another way to think about this and make it more personalized is half your body weight in ounces is how much water you need per day. So if you're a 200-pound person, you would need 100 ounces of water per day. If you're a 150-pound person, you would need 75 ounces of water per day. And this has nothing to do with exercise. This is just for your general health. This is what you need to stay hydrated. Water is an important, vital component to everything that your body is doing, whether it's movement or chemical reactions for, processes, breaking down food and nutrition, and for your organs to be able to do what they need to be able to do. Water is a vital, vital component to that. We want to take in small amounts throughout the day. It's not a test. You can't cram for it. So if, it's 8 o'clock at night and you're like, oh no, I didn't drink any water today, it's not a great idea to slam and chug those 64 ounces before you go to bed. Number of, issues with that. You're going to be up all night going to the bathroom and you're not going to get the good quality sleep that you need. You're probably going to get an upset stomach. It could increase your risk of, throwing up. And it's, you're going to get bloat and your body just can't process that much water at one time. And then if we do that before exercise, that's our body's not going to have enough time to process it and store it where it needs to. So we have the appropriate hydration in our muscles and tissues and all of that. Let's see, we have a couple questions. So someone asked about liquids such as tea counting towards hydration and whether or not it can be just water. So tea can be, it depends on the kind of tea. Herbal tea can add to your hydration, but not coffee or like green tea or black tea because of the caffeine in them. Caffeine requires water from your body to be processed. So it actually dehydrates you. It's a diuretic. So it's going to make your body expel more water out of your system. So some tea, yes, but not all tea, especially, or if it's sweet tea, sugar in there also makes your body use water to be able to process through that sugar and expel it out of your body. So those are dehydrating factors. How do we know whether or not we're hydrated? Well, a really good guide is your urine. So when we first wake up in the morning, it's going to be darker. We haven't had anything to drink for probably about 8 hours or so. So it's probably going to be in this mid-range, this middle row here, that's that medium yellow color, and that's okay. But we want to really live in that top layer of color. So there is such a thing as overhydration. Like I said, if this would be a chronic issue. So if we're constantly drinking way too much water and our urine is always looking like that first beaker where it's totally clear, it's the same color as the water that we're drinking, that's not good. We're depleting ourselves of some vitamins and minerals. And that would be a chronic issue. If it looks like that one time because you just drank a bunch of water, that's okay, that's normal. But we should really live in a happy zone of fluctuating between those top 3 beakers that we're showing. If you're ever at the bottom 3 beakers, that's really a health concern, and you should probably be checking in with your healthcare provider on that. That's really dehydrated, and it's bad for your system as for your body overall, not just in relation to exercise. So for exercise, to be properly hydrated for that, we want to drink about 16 ounces an hour before exercise to make sure that our body has the hydration that it needs. And that's going to give you time to process as well. So if you have to go to the bathroom before you work out, you'll have time to do that. And then about 8 ounces, 15 minutes before to make sure that our body has time to process some water to get it into our system in that first 15 to 20 minutes of exercise. We've already put a base layer of hydration in there. And then every 15 to 20 minutes during exercise, we want another 4 to 12 ounces of water. And then after exercise, we want to take in about 16 to 20 ounces of water. You're going to sweat with exercise, especially in really hot environments, or if it was really vigorous activity, or you may just be a heavy sweater. Some people are. All that weight that you lose immediately in a given bout of exercise is going to be related to the sweat, and that's going to be hydration. So we want to make sure that we're replenishing that into our system. It's really important for our body to recover and be able to do all the processes that it needs to do to make sure that we're safely exercising and being able to recover and rebuild our muscles and have do all the other actions that it needs to do. There's a lot of talk about sports drinks, the Gatorades and Powerades of the world. You really don't need those unless you're engaging in moderate to vigorous activity for an hour or more. Then we start to lose some electrolytes and water's not enough. So a sports drink like the Gatorades and Powerades of the world would be beneficial to replenish those electrolytes that are lost and give you a little bit of sugar and energy. But if you're not exercising for more than an hour and it's not in that moderate to vigorous activity level, or if it's not in really hot conditions, like you are gardening outside all day, then we really don't need those sports drinks. Water is plenty, and it's where we should be getting most of our hydration from. So what are the effects of dehydration? Well, it shortens our time to fatigue. Why is that a problem? Most injuries occur later in training and exercise when fatigue starts to set in. So if we're shortening our time to fatigue, we're increasing our risk of injury sooner in exercise, and nobody wants that. The more that we increase our risk of exercise, the less likely we're going to engage in it, and the more time off that we'll have to take. It also has a negative impact on body temperature regulation, meaning it's going to be an increased risk of heat-related injuries, such as heat cramps or muscle cramps where your muscles in spasm. They can be pretty painful, or heat syncope, which is dizziness, and then some more serious heat-related illnesses such as heat exhaustion and heat stroke. So we want to be able to avoid all of those things.
We have a quick question about electrolyte pills when exercising a lot. How do you feel about those?
Sure. So if you're someone that is prone to muscle cramps, I think electrolyte pills are okay, especially if you want to avoid the things like Gatorade and Powerade because of sugar, or for whatever reason, they're, food coloring and all of that sort of thing. Some people just don't want to engage in those things. I wouldn't say that there's something that everybody should take before every exercise. I've had, athletes in the past that are prone to muscle cramps. So for those electrolyte pills are appropriate an hour to an hour and a half before exercise, because they are slow release and they need time for your body to break them down and be absorbed into the system, and they need to be taken with a full 8-ounce glass of water. So your body again has the ability to process that and break it down. So it's not for everybody, but there are some appropriate times to use that. Okay, so let's talk about nutrition next. So general nutrition guidelines, we're talking about macronutrients first. That's our carbohydrates, fat, and protein. We want 55% of our calories to come from carbohydrates, 30% from fat, and 15% from protein. We want to make sure that we're taking in whole, unprocessed foods. We want to avoid alcohol. Again, it's a diuretic. We want to make sure that we're not unnecessarily dehydrating ourselves, and the hangover effect can actually reduce athletic performance by 11.4%, which, is pretty significant if you're a competitive athlete. We want to limit simple sugar intake. So that's going to be anything with a high glycemic index, meaning your body is going to burn through it very quickly. So you're going to get a big jolt of energy and then you're going to crash. our simple sugars are things like candy, white bread, pop, most baked goods like donuts and muffins and that sort of thing. All of that has a high glycemic index and we're going to burn through very quickly. That's also going to shorten our time to fatigue, like we talked a little bit about earlier, is that most injuries occur later in training when fatigue is set in. So, can you imagine what you're doing if you're eating sugar and you're dehydrated and your body needs extra water to process through that sugar, and then you're shortening your time to fatigue. So now you've, threefold increased your risk of injury. The other part about carbohydrates, which simple sugars are in fact a carbohydrate, it takes 3 grams of water for every 1 gram of carbohydrate for your body to process that and store it appropriately and break it down. So again, we need that much more water if we're taking in a lot of salty or sugary foods. We also want to eat a variety through meals and snacks. A variety of foods will ensure that we have proper nutrition. That's going to be our micronutrient side, where our vitamins and minerals are coming from, which are really important for our body to go through all the processes, again, that it needs to be able to do chemical reactions to make our muscles, flex and extend, and our bones and muscles grow, and for our bodies to be able to recover. So, I have a picture here of what a balanced diet would look like. I mean, I wouldn't eat all these things in one plate. It's just giving you a general idea that 50% of your plate or your meal should be fruits and vegetables. We need a smaller portion of protein from plant-based or animals. And then we want to take in, whole grain foods. So brown rice and whole grain breads and that sort of thing. We want to avoid the white rice and the white bread as much as possible. And then, of course, your drink of choice should be water. So let's talk about timing in relation to exercise of foods. So if when it comes to exercise, you want to make sure you have a full meal 2 to 3 hours before activity. That's going to give your body time to digest, so you don't get an upset stomach during activity and run the risk of throwing up. That's never good. Nobody ever wants to do that. And it's going to give your body some time to break down the nutrients that you've given it and put it in some proper storage areas for use later during your activity. About 45 minutes to an hour before exercise, we want to have a complex carb snack with that low glycemic index. So this is going to be something like you can do a granola bar. We want to make sure it's one of those healthy granola bars like a Luna bar or a Cliff bar, or something that's, again, put together with whole foods. It can be something homemade. We want to avoid those things that are like a Quaker Oats chewy bar, anything with high fructose corn syrup in it. We don't want to take that in. It's going to have a high glycemic index like we talked about, and your body's going to burn through it really quickly. Not the best choice there. And then after exercise, we want to take in a carb and protein combo snack within 30 minutes of completing exercise. This is going to give your body a little boost and energy. It's just broken down a bunch of things and used a bunch of nutrients for energy. And so we want to give it what it needs to when it starts to recover and rebuild your muscles and that sort of thing. So an example of this would be an apple with peanut butter or any sort of nut butter of your choice. Now we want to talk a little bit about what are the impacts of fasting or a poor diet. Again, fasting is going to delay our recovery, shorten our time to fatigue. Again, going back to what we just talked about, is most injuries occur later in training when we're tired. And so if we're dehydrated now, and now we have poor nutrition on top of it, our time to fatigue is going to be very quickly. And then you're not going to be able to give your body what it needs to recover from the exercise. Your body learns it, the demands that you're going to put on it. It will learn whether or not you are going to replace what you've used. So if you don't drink enough water regularly, your body knows that. So it's gonna hold back because everything has a survival mode, and its goal is to survive. So it may not let you get to your best competitive level or your best level of conditioning because you're not giving it the hydration and nutrients that it needs through hydration and diet in order to be able to get to those more conditioned levels. Okay, last on our list of daily activities is sleep. So general guidelines for adults is everyone needs 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Your body recovers from everything that you did the day before during our sleep hours. So if you are not getting enough sleep, your body's not getting enough time to recover from the demands that you just put on it the day before, and it's not going to be able to have enough time to prepare for the next day. So again, it's essential to recovery. It's when your body goes through the rebuilding phase. And then sleep deprivation, it can reduce your reaction time, hand-eye coordination, and accuracy. We can see, right off the bat how that can be problematic in terms of exercise. It could be as simple as you're a runner and you're tired because you're not getting enough sleep, and you misjudge a curb and you step on it wrong and you sprain your ankle or hurt your knee, or much worse. It also negatively impacts your pain management ability. So when you exercise, there is some soreness, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, that comes along with it. It's a normal part of the exercise process, but your perceived pain level when you don't sleep enough is much higher. So something that may not be that big of a deal, or may just really not hurt that much, seems like it is much worse than it actually is. And then lastly, it also negatively impacts your metabolism. So if you're trying to build muscle, you're not going to be able to do that if you're not sleeping properly, or if you're trying to lose weight, you're not going to be able to do that as well as you would if you're not sleeping properly. So what are some good ways to get good sleep? Well, let's set a bedtime routine. I know I have to be up by 6 o'clock every morning. I'm an 8-hour sleeper. I go to bed at 10 o'clock every night. I turn off the electronics, the blue light from computers and TVs and phones. We've heard this plenty of times. It messes with your circadian rhythm. It keeps you alert and awake longer than you should be. And it turns off that sleep, that melatonin in your brain that tells you it's time to go to bed. We want to avoid caffeine and heavy meals, alcohol and cigarettes before we go to bed. All of those sorts of things affect your sleep cycle. You're not going to be able to get into that REM sleep like you need to. That's actually going to be where the rebuilding phase is and the recovery phase is of your sleep. You want to start your internal clock right when you wake up in the morning. Expose yourself to a bright natural light. That'll kickstart your circadian rhythm, so you'll feel tired at the appropriate time when the sun starts to go down. And then we want to keep our room cool. There's studies have shown that we sleep better at a lower temperature. And lastly, you don't want to rely on catch-up sleep. So if last night you only got 5 hours, that's okay. Over the next couple of nights, you may be able to catch up on that sleep. But if over a week's time, you're constantly shorting yourself hours every night, well, when are we ever going to catch up on that? You're going to sleep 15 to 20 hours on a weekend? Probably not. So we're always going to be in that sleep debt. So we don't want to rely on that catch-up sleep. All right, so now we're going to talk about exercise and how to engage and exercise safely and to prevent injury. So the 4 key components of that are gradual progression, variety, strength and balance, and recovery. So gradual progression, we want to engage in a warm-up. Now, there's conflicting information out there about whether or not a proper warm-up actually prevents injury. There's not a lot of evidence that shows that it in fact does prevent injury, but there isn't any evidence that says that it doesn't either. So it's a good idea to do. It should be 5 to 10 minutes in length, and it should start at a low intensity and gradually increase to a moderate intensity. It's going to get your blood flowing. It prepares your muscles for work. It promotes proper movement patterns and should be reflective of the activity that you're going to be doing. So if you're doing any sort of sport that involves running, that, we can start off with a light jog, some high knees and butt kicks, some lateral movements, and some dynamic stretching, which is mean we're actually moving through, we're not sitting and holding that stretch. Then we want to, in terms of an exercise program, we want to start low and go slow. So too much too fast can be dangerous. Even if you were really active, we just came out of we're still coming out of a time that people aren't going to the gym as much as they used to. They're changing the types of exercises that they were doing. You may have been somebody that ran 5 miles a day pre-pandemic, and now, you haven't done that for several months and you want to start getting back into it. We can't start at that 5-mile mark. We should start about 50% of what we were doing before and see how we tolerate that. Your body is deconditioned, and if we do too much too fast, again, increasing our risk for injury. There are some other chemical responses that can happen. There's something called rhabdomyolysis that is rare, but if we do too much too fast of intense activity, our body doesn't have enough, we do too much of the breaking down process in our body, and our body can't recover from it. You can get sick, and it can be pretty dangerous on your organs and that sort of thing. So we want to avoid doing too much too fast. We want to increase the intensity or duration by 10 to 15% on a weekly basis. So if, let's say there's a flight of stairs, you're only able to do that flight of stairs once a day, 3 days a week. That's okay. The next week, let's try to do that flight of stairs 4 days a week. And then, progress from there. If you are somebody that walks and never runs, but you want to get into running, well, let's start with a 10 to 20 minute exercise where we walk for 4 minutes and then jog for a minute. And then that's 1 5-minute set. And then we're going to do that again. So we'll repeat that based on what our conditioning level is and what we can tolerate. And then the last thing that we want to do is a cool down. Again, just like a warm up, there isn't a whole lot of evidence that says doing a cool down prevents injury, but there isn't evidence that says that it in fact does not do that either. So this is going to be where you bring your body's heart rate down, and this is really the best time to stretch. Your muscles are super warm at this point, and we want to increase mobility. So this is going to be your static sit and hold stretch. And again, it should be reflective of activity. If you were doing a bunch of squats during your exercise, then it's really important to stretch the lower extremity. So we want to stretch those quads, those muscles in the front of your thighs, and your hamstrings, the muscles in the back of your thighs. So this is just an example of a cool down or a warm up and a cool down stretch. So you can see, start with the light jog for the warm up, some high knee tucks, the butt kicks like we talked about, and then you can get into some more explosive movements like power skips, karaoke, lateral lunge, slides, and that sort of thing. So that would be a good warm up. And then for an example of a cool down stretch, you stretch your arms and doing some lunges to get that hip flexor, an overhead stretch. Forward bend is going to get the hamstrings. The toe touch is going to get the hamstrings as well. Child's pose is going to get your lower back. quadricep stretch, and then, you know, some of the more yoga-like poses for the cobra pose and the thigh hug. Again, these are examples, and it should be, whatever you do should be relative to the activity that you're doing, but these are really common warm-ups and cool downs that are pretty applicable to a number of activities. So the next part of our injury prevention regime in terms of exercise is getting a variety of activity in. So we want to do aerobic activity, we want to do strength training, and we want to work on our balance and mobility. So our aerobic activities are anything that's going to be over a longer amount of time, and we're breathing through those things. So walking, biking, swimming, even sports like soccer and tennis and basketball. And we also want to do strengthening exercises. So these can be body weight or weightlifting. So body weight exercises would be like push-ups and squats and planks. And some of these can even, you start out at a body weight level because that's your current level of strength, and that's totally fine. And then they can progress into some weightlifting exercises. They can either be with free weights or machine weights or resistance bands, but as our bodies condition and adapt to the loads that we're putting on it, we want to keep challenging it again and increasing so we get stronger and better. Two other things that are really important to a proper workout regime is balance and mobility. So mobility is formerly known as flexibility, that's sit and stretch. We don't think about it in those terms anymore. We want mobility of joints. So the mobility of a joint could be soft tissue, related, where, our muscles do in fact need to be elongated. They could also be a restriction because another muscle is working too hard because something else isn't doing its job. So again, that's where the variety comes in. It's going to ensure a well-rounded fitness routine and make sure that we're getting all of our major muscle groups and not just focusing on, certain muscle groups that are used a lot in particular exercises.
We have
go ahead.
Sorry, we have a couple questions. One, should you walk right after dinner? And two, doesn't swimming laps also help to strengthen, like particularly your arms and upper body?
Sure. So you can absolutely walk after dinner. Some light activity after eating is actually really good. Even doing the dishes, standing at the sink and doing the dishes, it's really good for your body's digestion. We just don't want to engage in like moderate to intense activity right after we eat, because again, like I said, we're going to get that digestive upset effect and, increase our risk of vomiting and all that good food that we just ate, and we don't want to do that. But yeah, some light activity after eating is really good. It's much better than going and sitting on the couch and laying down and watching TV for 2 hours. So yeah, absolutely, a walk after dinner is great. And can you repeat the second question for me?
Doesn't swimming laps also help to strengthen, particularly your arms and upper body?
It does. So that's going to be the muscular endurance part of it. So you are going to get stronger the more conditioned that you get, and your muscles are going to be more conditioned to that activity. So any sport that you're doing, like even walking, running, biking, you're going to be increasing your strength, but it's going to be specific to that activity as opposed to resistance training, where it's actually going to focus on breaking down the muscles and recruiting more neurons to engage in your muscles every time they have to flex or extend or lift something. So we can actually make them stronger with the resistance training, and that can actually add to your swimming or your biking or running and make you even a better swimmer, biker, runner, whatever that is. So Talking about balance, yoga and Tai Chi are really fantastic things to engage in to increase your balance. They're also going to help with, we're going to talk about this a little bit more on the next slide, but yoga and Tai Chi studies have shown that they have a phenomenal increase on balance in the older populations. Even riding a bike regularly increases everyone's ability to balance better. So now focusing on strength and balance. So we want to strengthen those major muscle groups like I was just talking about. It's going to prevent that deterioration of muscle tissue, which is really important because as we age, our muscles are just going to naturally get smaller. So we want to prevent that as much as we can. And we really want to not neglect our core muscles. We sit a lot. It's part of our society, whether it's at work, in the car, again, watching TV, or, watching kids and grandkids engage in sports. So we want to counteract a lot of that, what we do throughout the day in terms of lifestyle, and make sure that we're impacting the appropriate muscles. So your core is more than just your abs. I have this little picture here. It's really from your hips to your shoulders. It includes the back muscles, the pelvic floor, your diaphragm, which is your breathing muscle, and your glutes, which these are all important muscles that work together to make sure that you maintain proper balance. So your core needs to fire every time you take a step to make sure that you maintain proper balance. Now, if your core is not doing that, and that can mean, your abdominal muscles and your glutes and everything, your larger muscles, like your prime movers, like your quads and hamstrings, will try to compensate for that. So where your job of your quads and hamstrings is to flex and extend your hips and knee. If your core isn't firing when it's supposed to every time you take a step, your quads will try to create some stability for you. And that's where we start to get into those overuse injuries. And it starts to become, a strain or a pull. And we start to get some really tightness in there. A lot of people will complain of hip flexor pain. There's nothing really wrong with the hip flexor. It's just trying to do more than what its true job is to do. So we think about those chronic injuries like that, like overuse, as the victim and culprit. The victim always cries out. So I may have chronic knee pain, but there's nothing really wrong with my knee. That's not where the problem is. It's the victim, it's crying out, but the culprit is farther up in the chain where my core is. My core isn't firing the way that it should be every time I step. So whether it's walking or running, we want to make sure that the mechanism is in the right sequence. So if you think about a link in a chain, your body is one big chain. And if there's a weak link, every other chain or every other link in that chain has to take on more stress. So if our core isn't doing its job, your lower extremities and your upper extremities have to take on more stress. This is where people get a lot of low back pain and a lot of low back injury because their core isn't firing properly. We haven't trained it to do so. If you look at babies, when they start to walk and crawl, they have all the mobility and correct firing patterns that we'll ever need in life, but we lose that over time because of lifestyle. So we want to make sure that we're doing a well-rounded fitness routine to combat that. And again, it's going to reduce your risk of fall, which is, huge as we age, because it's going to help us maintain that proper balance. So here's just some examples of simple exercises that you can start adding in to your everyday routine just to increase your ability to get your core to fire properly. So the first one is going to be diaphragmatic breathing. And there's just a couple of pictures of here. I like to have people do this on the floor. You put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. You're going to inhale through your nose and push your belly out as far as you can with that inhale. And then as you exhale, you're going to pull your belly in and push your belly button towards your spine so you feel your core contract. And you'll do this, for maybe 5 minutes. It doesn't take a long time, just to make sure that you get that proper patterning in. Your diaphragm, which is your breathing muscle, is part of your core. So we want to make sure that that is working properly. Your lungs are your breathing organ. So your chest will rise some with you breathe. When you breathe, it should. Your lungs are filling with air, but it shouldn't be the primary part that you're breathing through. So if we're breathing through our chest all day, it's like doing 1,000 shoulder shrugs a day, and that's never good for anyone. It creates a lot of tension in the shoulders and upper back pain and neck stiffness, and we want to avoid that. Diaphragmatic breathing is a really good relaxation tool as well. You're getting more oxygen in your system. This can be great to help you relax before you go to sleep at night. Or if you're having any tension or stress, it can just be a good way to kind of meditate and check out and reset yourself. The next middle picture is just simple balance. There's a chair there just for safety. So you can just stand on one foot, see if you can hold that for 20 seconds, and then do it the same thing on the other foot and do that about 5 times. And then the last one is a plank. This is a modified plank where it's on the knees. It's going to be a little bit simpler or easier to do. And as you build up strength, you can move into a full plank where you're on your toes. This is going to really focus on, again, that whole core system. So your abdominals, your lower back, your glutes, your quads, and shoulder muscles as well. So it's a really excellent, well-rounded exercise. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is what to expect after exercise. So we're going to be fatigued, more tired than usual. That's, normal. We're increasing the demand on our body of what we're asking it to do. We're burning through more calories. So it's natural to feel more tired. You may, especially as you're getting started in exercise, or you're increasing, or you're trying something new. It's normal to feel more tired and want to get more sleep at night. That's okay. Our thirst is going to be increased. Obviously, we're burning through a lot of calories, which took water to process, and we're sweating, which also is water. So we're going to have to drink more water, a normal reaction. And then lastly, we're also going to have increased hunger. Again, burning through more calories, putting a larger demand on our body. So it's normal to feel hungry and want to have a snack. And we just want to make sure that that's a healthy snack, like we talked about before. We're skipping the chips and the fast food and replacing that with something healthy like fruit and like a nut butter or something like that. And then the last thing is soreness. And we're going to go a little bit more into this now. So the soreness that you feel after exercise is called delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS for short. It's completely normal for your body to feel this way. Your body actually has to break down a little to be able to build back up stronger. And DOMS is actually the result of micro tears in the tissue from the stress that you've put on it. It peaks at about 24 to 48 hours and then lasts for usually about 72 hours, it's resolved. There's also some, because of those micro tears, there's some increased swelling to the area. So again, staying really well hydrated is going to help alleviate that, which leads us into how to combat DOMS. We want to, again, stay really well hydrated. We want to stay active. It may seem counterintuitive. I'm sore. I don't want to move. I'll just, sit on the couch and rest today. That's actually going to make you more sore. If we stay active, even if it's, just doing something like a recovery day, like a yoga, or just simple stretching. You can also do a foam roller if you're familiar with those things, or a massage. Getting that fluid flushed out of your system, that extra bit of swelling that's occurring from the exercise. is going to alleviate some of that pain that you're having from the soreness, because it's going to alleviate the pressure on your nerves and stuff that we're having. And again, we want to stretch, but it's really important to just not sit on the couch and do nothing. We want to have an active rest day. And then when is DOMS more than DOMS? Well, if it's not improving over, the course of those 3 days, it's lasting a lot longer than 3 days, or it's actually worsening, or it's a sharp or intense pain. Or if it's one-sided. Most things that you do, most activity is going to require both sides of your body, right and left. So if I went on a run and just my right leg is really bothering me, and it doesn't improve over, the course of a couple of days, that's something I want to see a healthcare provider about. Something's wrong, something else is going on. Both legs should be equally sore. And it shouldn't be an intense soreness. If we're rating it on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being you have to go to the emergency room, your pain is so bad. Typical DOMS will peak at about that 3 level. So annoying, but definitely tolerable. And then the last important key factor is recovery. So we don't want to do intense activity every day. We don't want to even do moderate activity every day. We need an active rest day, even if it's just to, reset your mind and refocus and get, so you're able to continue the rest of the week or next coming week. And it should be at least 1 day per week, and should be low in intensity and low in impact. And this could be, like we said, yoga, walking, or just simple household chores, even, like doing laundry, vacuuming, the dishes, all of that sort of thing is active rest. Your body is moving through some things, and we're not putting a lot of stress on our system. So in review, eat well, drink water, get plenty of Z's, start low, go slow, change it up, keep the variety in there, and then we want to rest and recover. So with that, we will move into some questions.
Hi, Sam. We had a couple questions about planks
Okay.
that I didn't see until you had moved on. So I just wanted to ask them now. The first one is, what about doing planks against the wall?
Sure, that it's a modified plank. You can start at an angle. A lot of people start push-ups this way as well. So if you're not able to tolerate a full plank on the floor with all that gravity on you, doing plank against the wall is a great way to start. The other thing with planks is that we just want to be able to hold a plank for as long as we can maintain the proper posture. So we're not arching our back, our butt's not sticking up in the air, we're not sinking our hips down to the floor or to the wall. If you're trying to hold on to that exercise and you're not maintaining a proper posture just to get to a certain level of time to be able to hold that exercise, we're actually increasing our risk of injury. So if you can't hold something for a proper posture, it's time to rest from that. So I typically, you'll hear people out there that like, I can hold a plank for a whole minute. Well, I don't really believe that you can hold a proper plank for a full minute. There are some people out there, sure, that can probably do that, but they're really fit. And my goal would be able to hold 3 planks for 20 seconds with a 10-second rest in between. That's still a minute, but that's going to maintain that proper posture for a full time. So if you can only hold the proper posture for 5 seconds, that's fine. Take a 5-second rest, try to do it again. See if you can get up to, 4 or 5 times of doing that. And then as your conditioning level increases, you can increase the amount of time that you're holding that proper posture for. Great.
And the second question is, what about side planks? The benefits and the challenges?
Yeah, so side planks are also great. They are going to affect your core in a different way. again, the same progression that you do with a regular plank, you can do with the side plank. You can start it with on your knees and with one arm up, and that's going to give you a shorter bridge. So it's not as much stress. You can also start these, you can attempt to do these against a wall as well. So your feet are angled out and it's less gravity on you. And then as you progress from a wall side plank to a floor side plank on your knees, then you can go to the full floor side plank on your feet. And then again, extend that period of time to hold that proper posture. When I'm doing injury prevention programs, I always do a normal plank and a side plank when training.
Great. One person asked, she and her partner are fairly sedentary and they just started the Body Groove program every other day. Have you heard of that program and do you have any opinion on it?
I'm not familiar with the Body Groove program, so I don't know entirely what it entails, but I would say if you're going from a sedentary lifestyle, definitely make sure that you've checked in with a healthcare practitioner, had a physical, make sure that you're healthy enough for that activity. And if you're doing any sort of pre-recorded or pre-designated exercise program, whether it's, do these set exercises at this pace or this many times, make sure it's something that you can handle. So if it's something where you're doing 5 exercises for 3 rounds, if there's a particular exercise in there that you're really struggling with, it's okay to modify that exercise. It's better to modify something, take it down in intensity, and only be able to do 1 or 2 or a couple of them and do it with proper form and posture than it is to try to get through as many as you can in a certain allotted amount of time. We see this a lot with burpees. If you're ever familiar with this type of exercise, you start standing, you jump, and then you jump down into a plank, and then you jump back into a squat, and then you jump up again. So that's a really dynamic exercise. And a lot of times people try to burn through burpees as fast as they can because it's hard, and they don't maintain the proper posture in that, and they can get they hurt their backs a lot. So I always tell people, let's take this jumping portion out of it. Can you walk through this? Hands up, lower into a squat, walk your feet out, hold that plank for a second, walk your feet back in, and then stand up out of the squat. If you can do that with proper posture, as we build strength, we can build up the intensity component of it. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. Also, your opinion of drinking carbonated water.
So carbonated water is okay to an extent. You shouldn't be drinking carbonated water all the time. If you're, having dinner and you want to have your carbonated water, that's totally fine. But the gas in there does have an acidic effect on your stomach, and it's not that it doesn't necessarily properly hydrate you because it is water. It does a good job, but it can have some other impacts on your digestive system. So you shouldn't be drinking carbonated water all the time. They're nice, like treat for yourself. That's totally fine. They don't have any sugar in them. There's usually a nice natural fruit flavor in there, but it shouldn't be your main source of hydration.
Great. Does taking a nap help on days that you do not get 7 to 9 hours of sleep?
You can take a nap, absolutely. And but we want to nap in 20 to 30 minute increments. There's a bunch of studies that it takes us that long to get into that REM cycle. So you should, if you're going to take a 20 to 30 minute nap, that's fine. But don't take like a random 45-minute nap. You're going to wake up in a REM cycle, or so it should be like that 30, 60, 120, sort of 30, 60, 90, 120 time increments.
Oh, okay. What about insomnia? For example, waking up at night, not able to get back to sleep, or finally drifting off with intense dreams. She says meditation, relaxation helps somewhat, as well as allergy medications for muggy nights, but getting unbroken, undisturbed sleep is very difficult. Sleep hygiene measures do not completely work. Do you have any recommendations?
So it sounds like there might be a lot going on. I would suggest checking with a sleep specialist. If you are eating a really healthy diet and you are managing your stress in healthy ways, you're getting properly hydrated, you're not taking in a lot of caffeine, and you don't really struggle with anxiety, or you're managing that appropriately and you're still not getting enough sleep, or you're struggling with insomnia, that is outside of my wheelhouse. And you're, also, again, you should be exercising too. So I would check in with your primary care provider and see if they recommend you seeing a sleep specialist.
Okay. That is all the questions on the Q&A. I do have to say that Anne wrote in, wow, this program is incredibly complete. A million thanks. So,
well, thank you so much. I am so glad to have all of you here today joining me. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email. My email is here on the screen. It's samantha.cochran@amitahealth.org. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. I'm also part of the Sports Medicine Outreach Program with AMITA Health. It is my job to connect the community to our healthcare system, help navigate the healthcare system, and insurance as well, to get you with the appropriate provider. So if you have any questions like that, again, feel free to reach out to me.
Great. Thank you very much, Sam. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Goodbye.